Welcome to Anews. I'm Umar Taslim and you're watching Turkiye's Diplomacy. Today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Mehmet Çelik from Daily Sabah and Dr. Ufuk Necat Taşçı from the Çanakkale 18 Mart University. We'll be discussing the PKK terror group's announced dissolution and what it means for Turkey's security, as well as the Ukraine-Russia peace talks expected to take place in Istanbul this week.
Cumhur İttifakı olarak iç cephemizi tahkim etme amacıyla büyük bir samimiyetle hayata geçirdiğimiz terörsüz Türkiye sürecinde bugün kritik bir eşiği daha aştık.
The Turkish government's initiative to create a terror-free country marks a historic step toward lasting peace and stability. This bold and comprehensive initiative seeks to address decades of conflict, promote national unity, and foster a future of harmony for all citizens.
Terör örgütü kendini feshetme ve silahları teslim etme kararı aldığını açıkladı. Alınan kararı ülkemizin güvenliğinin, bölgemizin huzurunun, milletimizin ebedi kardeşliğinin perçinlenmesi adına önemli buluyoruz.
This initiative not only aims to end violence but also seeks to lay the foundation for a new era of prosperity. The end of terrorism would allow the nation to focus its energy on economic development, infrastructure improvement, and the well-being of its citizens.
Terörün ve şiddetin tamamen devreden çıkmasıyla birlikte başta siyasetin demokratik kapasitesinin güçlendirilmesi olmak üzere her alanda yeni bir dönemin kapıları açılacaktır.
As the government continues its efforts, there is hope that the country will emerge stronger, more united, and better positioned to face the challenges of the future. The Terror-Free Initiative represents not just the end of conflict, but the beginning of a new chapter in Turkey's history, one that is characterized by peace, security, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow for all its people.
Bu açıklamayı Kuzey Irak'la birlikte Suriye ve Avrupa başta olmak üzere örgütün tüm uzantılarını da kapsayan bir karar olarak değerlendiriyoruz.
Welcome back to the program. Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator, Dr. Mehmet Çelik, welcome to the program as well. Dr. Mehmet, a historic moment for Turkey's fight against terrorism. Yesterday we saw that the PKK terror group has disbanded, has dissolved. What's going to happen? Let's talk about the terror-free Turkey first. This was an initiative led by MHP's Devlet Bahçeli. Mehmet, how did the PKK come to this decision now? Because over the past 40 years, 47 years to be precise, and the deaths of 40,000 plus people. So how has the PKK come to this decision? Let's talk about the terror-free Turkey initiative first.
Well, terror-free Turkey initiative was initially a very big political risk taken by the MHP leader. I mean, he would be perhaps the least expected person to make such an announcement because, I mean, he's the leader of the Nationalist Movement Party. And Turkey has suffered, as you mentioned, from PKK terrorist group for the past 4 decades. And we've lost more than 40,000 people. The region itself suffered significantly in many different levels, economically, sociologically, psychologically, in terms of development of the region. But also this terror problem that the PKK brought to Turkey was not only confined to within Turkey's border. Northern Iraq suffers from that. Northern Syria suffers from that. Some parts of Iran suffer from that. But I think, you know, as an imperialist project in the region, and what I mean by that is the PKK itself, although it acted at least a group that propagated for the Kurdish rights, we know that its supporters are not there to care for the Kurds as an ethnic group, but they armed the PKK nevertheless, so that it can bring instability, it can bring chaos, it can bring terror and security problems to the region, so that the regional actors, regional countries, they are kept in line and they are kept busy with this problem for many decades, for many years, as a challenge in front of them. Now, the MHP leader made this call. As you know, previously, Turkey also had this reconciliation process. It was initiated through goodwill and there was good intentions, but unfortunately, the results didn't meet that good intention in the early 2010s. Now, this is the second time that the state, with all its different actors involved, is taking this work very seriously, and they have actually taken steps to materialize this process and to make sure that it can actually turn into something more tangible, and the PKK ultimately lays down arms. Now, yesterday, we know this historic step was taken as the group announced that they will lay down arms. But I think this is not the end. This is the beginning of this initiative, because what will come afterwards will make a big difference. The announcement is there, but we know that PKK itself is multi-tiered and transboundary terrorist group involving northern Syria, northern Iraq, some parts of Iran, Turkey, as well as European Union. And what I mean by that is, within the European Union, the financial activities of the group, the recruitment, and much of the organizational operations also do take place within European Union borders. So there is different geographical locations, but at the same time, organizationally, there is different tiers that this group has used to instill instability in the region. We say PKK, but in northern Syria, they act under the name of YPG, right? So there is a big picture, there's a big puzzle in front of us that will need to be solved and come to an end in all of its areas, because now the PKK has come to this decision. Of course, they have realized that the state will not give up its fight against terrorism. They have minimized the recruitment to their lines within Turkey. That recruitment has been minimized because the PKK has no longer any arguments that can actually draw people to. Many reforms were made for the Kurds in Turkey. Many development projects took place in the region. Security, through counterterrorism or through counter-terror operations in the region has been established, not only within Turkey, but Turkish security forces, through military operations and through intelligence operations. They have minimized the effectiveness of the group beyond its borders in northern Syria as well as northern Iraq as well. So they have realized that they cannot get people to support them any longer through this armed conflict. And they have come to realization that this problem can only be solved or can be discussed through political means. The Dem party, which is linked to the PKK, has always been there, but they were never able to detach themselves and become a party that appeals to Turkey as a country and all the voter base. But through their arguments, they were only able to draw very ideological voters that were sympathizers of the PKK, perhaps. But now we see that they also understand that Turkey will not let go its fight against terrorism. And if anything, if we want a future together, if we want a country that is united, if we want a country that will prosper for future generations, regardless of all the ethnicities, all the different identities that is within the country, we need to end this conflict. I think that this is part of the reason why they have finally come to a realization that they will never win this fight against the Turkish state, the Türkiye as a united front. So this is this is one part of the question. But on the other hand, I think this this new terror-free initiative was necessary because the region is going through a transformation. The world is going through a very big transformation right now. The remnants of the World War II, that system no longer serves the interests of any country. I think it brings only problems regionally or internationally. I mean, when we look at Ukraine, when we look at the Northern Africa, when we look at Horn of Africa, when we look at the Middle East, when we look at the rivalry between China and the United States, between Russia and the United States, when we look at the architecture, security architecture in Europe, we see that this international order is going through a transformation, and the current system is not, the current governance is not able to produce solutions. Now, seeing that this transformation, Türkiye wants to get rid of this burden that it has carried with it for the past over 40 years, for the past 4 decades. And it has a lot of energy. It lost people at many different levels. Turkish state has suffered from this terror group and this terror business. So it wants to leave that aside and move forward to Turkey's new century with a fresh start and stronger than how it has wasted nearly 50 years with this imperialist project at its door.
Mehmet, of course, the fight against terror is also extremely expensive, like you've just mentioned. Turkey has spent trillions of liras fighting terrorism inside the country and across the borders as well in northern Iraq and northern Syria. Now, let's talk about the ringleader, Abdullah Öcalan, right? The İmralı delegation, lawmakers from the Dem Party, they went and met with Öcalan and they discussed how to dissolve the PKK terror group. Now, let's say there's a situation where the PKK, not now, but in a few months, let's say, or years, decides to restart this militancy. Do you think that could be an option for the PKK group? Now it has said that it's going to dissolve and disband and lay down their arms. Do you think that something like that could happen in the future? And what sort of mechanisms would the Turkish government enforce here to ensure that the PKK would comply to its promises?
Well, the PKK, this whole process, as I said, it starts now. The important and delicate part of the terror-free initiative actually begins now. And why I'm saying that? Because given the nature and how the PKK has organized itself, there's a lot of offshoots that could sabotage this process. There is a lot of interest groups within the organization itself that could, for the sake of protecting their interests at many different levels, be it financially or in terms of power struggle in the leadership, it could sabotage this process. But also regionally, Israel, for example, could trigger, some tensions to sabotage this process itself. Now, how this will be ensured, the state has very different mechanisms, be it intelligence or military. But nevertheless, I think one of the key and important factors is that Türkiye is not negotiating anything with the PKK terrorist group. What I mean by that is Türkiye is not compromising. Türkiye is not at a table where it does this give and take negotiation with a terrorist group. Turkish state will never negotiate with a terrorist group. And this is why Türkiye says you either lay down arms through a peaceful process or a peaceful initiative, or we will bring them with force. We'll bring them down with force. And this is the same thing actually that has been proposed to Syria, the offshoot of the PKK, the YPG. Right now, Türkiye sees this whole initiative and the PKK's announcement, it deals with it as if it will cover all the factions within the PKK. But if they try to detach themselves in the northern Syria, for example, Türkiye will not refrain from using power or force. And they have mentioned that. They have said, you can go and discuss this integration process with the Syrian regime. If you don't lay down arms, which are at times used against us, which pose a threat to our citizens, our sovereignty, and our border security, we will not shy away from using force if it is necessary, as Turkey has done that before when it comes to fight against Daesh, when it comes to the YPG along its border, and to ensure that that terror corridor is not established. Turkey will not shy away from using force again. But nevertheless, I think there's a goodwill now, and there's good intentions, and Turkey wants to see if the Syrian offshoot will integrate, will lay down arms, integrate into the Syrian, the new nation building in Syria, and they will establish this new process with the Syrian government. But in overall, I think everybody realizes that, the region's countries and region's actors realize that this terror issue was a problem for not just only Turkey, but it brought insecurity, it brought instability and security problems for a region as a whole. And, you know, given the ideological formation of this group, we see that it's a Marxist-Leninist group with some very hardcore leftist ideology, or radical left ideology, but at the same time it was supported by the Western countries, by the United States, by the European Union countries or European countries in northern Syria, with lots of military support and equipment, as well as political and economical support. So now the region wants to solve all these problems within the region without the interference of the third parties, and this will benefit everybody in the future.
Mehmet, thanks for that analysis. Now let's take a look at this news report on Hakan Fidan. He was with the foreign ministers of Jordan and Syria yesterday.
Türkiye reaffirmed its readiness to continue supporting Syria in various fields under the framework of mutual agreements and shared regional priorities. Emphasizing the importance of cooperation based on mutual respect and national sovereignty, Ankara is committed to maintaining its constructive role during Syria's ongoing transition.
We, as regional countries and Syria's neighbors, are in search of how we can solve existing problems together with the awareness of regional ownership. We fully support Syria in every field.
Türkiye also stands firmly against any attempts to legitimize groups affiliated with terrorist organizations, stressing that weapons must remain under the control of the central authority. Türkiye stresses that the agreement between the Syrian government and the Syrian Democratic Forces must not allow formations linked to terrorism to gain political or military influence. Any initiative that threatens Syria's unity or sovereignty is considered unacceptable.
The PKK's decision to dissolve itself is historic and important. I see this decision as important for lasting peace and stability to prevail in our region. There are practical steps to be taken after this decision is made, and we will follow them closely. Our greatest wish is for the democracy, freedom, prosperity and security area that we have developed over the last 20 years to expand even further, and for this situation to positively affect other states and peoples in our region.
With the fall of the Ba'ath Party's decades-long rule, Syria now stands at a crossroads. Türkiye's position remains clear: lasting peace and stability in Syria will be achieved through inclusive governance, national unity, and the elimination of terrorist threats, principles that will guide Ankara's support moving forward.
There is Israeli expansionism in the region, and this situation has reached a point where it threatens Syria's stability, security, and future. As regional countries, we have a common opinion that this expansionism and provocation must end as soon as possible.
Welcome back to the program. Now let's take a look at the front page of Daily Sabah. Mehmet, like we were discussing earlier, this is the main story for today. Terror-Free Turkey initiative leads PKK to declare dissolution. A very nice picture actually over there. I believe it's from Diyarbakir. You know, people are now going on the streets. People are out on the streets. People know that there's more freedom. People know there's no threat of terrorism. Let's take a look at this.
You see, about 15, 20 years ago, the region itself suffered a lot from this PKK terrorism. I mean, for the past 40 years, we've been suffering from that. But the region itself, I mean, cities like Diyarbakir, that atmosphere there wasn't as it is in the past, I would say, 2 decades now. Although the terrorism continued, the PKK terror continued in the past 2 decades until yesterday, still there was this atmosphere that wanted peace. Okay, I think this was very important. This atmosphere that was no longer interested in terrorism, no longer interested in an armed conflict. And this was simply due to how the state itself looked at the region, how the state itself perceived the people in the region, how the state itself decided to invest in the region so that the people in the region will seek happiness or hope, not in terror, but actually in political processes, in being in peace with the state itself. So I think this is a very symbolic picture. This is in Diyarbakir, a very historic town, one of the very historically rich towns of southeast Turkey, the predominantly Kurdish populated. We see this near Ulu Cami, one of the very historic mosques in Diyarbakir. Actually, it is considered one of the most, sacred places for the Islamic world as well. So, I mean, this picture is very symbolic. We see smiling faces. We see a very diverse composition in the picture. But nevertheless, I think if anybody, it's the Kurds themselves that suffer from this PKK terrorism. A group that has said that they are fighting for the rights of the Kurds. What they brought to the region as an imperialist project, a project that was supported by those who want instability in the region. They brought fear, they brought terror to the region. But we need to look at ahead. We need to look at the future, and we need to realize that all actors have a lot of responsibility that they share, and that the actual important tasks begin today with all the, how the disarmament will happen, how they will lay down arms, what will happen to the members of this, the ringleaders, the terrorist leaders within the group, how these will all evolve through some judicial processes. This is something that will be very delicate. There will be actors in the region that will want to sabotage this. And so everybody has a responsibility to make sure that this delicate process is not damaged.
Mehmet, at the top right, we have Trump embarking on his trip to the Middle East. Now, he has landed in Riyadh. He's going to visit Qatar as well. He's going to be in the UAE as well. Billions of dollars are expected to be transferred between all of these countries. But, what I want to ask you is, will the normalization with Israel be on the table, with Saudi Arabia?
I mean, Trump is coming to the region for 2 reasons. And it's a very symbolic visit because this is the second overseas visit that Trump is taking following his visit in Vatican, following the passing away of the Pope. Now, this is a new visit for Trump where he will want to play for the optics, where he will want to show that he has 2 capabilities or 2 talents. One, it will be as a businessman, as a tradesman. He will want to bring money back home with the Gulf money through investments. And I mean, we're talking about trillions of defense investments from Saudi Arabia. I think about nearly $1 trillion in investments into defense. But on the other hand, Trump will want to show that he's a statesman. He can actually carry out some strategic or geopolitical matters to the next stage. What I mean by that is, we know there is the big issue of Palestine and as a bleeding wound for the Muslim world, the Gaza genocide taking place by the Israelis there. This will be, of course, on the table. The normalization with Israel between the Gulf states and namely Saudi Arabia and Israel will be on the issue. But I'm not sure if it is going to be as easy given the genocide taking place in Gaza. There will be the issue of Yemen. What will happen to Lebanon, for example, Syria. There's a lot of developments, but on the other hand, there's also the Chinese-Saudi relations that Trump will want to counter with strengthening the already very strong relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States. Many regional and international developments will be also on the agenda, but I think at the same time, if this visit in Istanbul between Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin takes place in Istanbul, so that for that Ukraine-Russia talks, I think that will also be a very strong issue that Trump will have to discuss during his Middle East trip. And he mentioned he may even visit Istanbul at the time.
Mehmet, thanks for that analysis. Thanks for updating us on the key headlines. This is definitely going to be a recurring headline over the next few days. Now let's take a look at this news report and we'll be right back.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responded guardedly on Sunday to a proposal from Russian President Vladimir Putin of rapid, direct talks aimed at ending the war. Putin made his proposal in a televised statement from the Kremlin on Saturday, more than 3 years after he sent Russian forces to invade the smaller neighbor. U.S. President Donald Trump, who says he wants to be remembered as a peacemaker, called Putin's proposal, quote, a potentially great day for Russia and Ukraine. Trump broke from his predecessor, Joe Biden, in dropping a demand for an immediate Russian withdrawal from Ukraine, and instead pressed both sides to agree to a temporary ceasefire.
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than I'd agree.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
Zelensky and other Western allies resisted this, saying a pause in fighting would allow Russia to redeploy forces for further attacks. But they relented in the face of U.S. pressure and accepted the idea of a temporary truce. The Ukrainian leader said it was, quote, a positive sign that the Russians have finally begun to consider ending the war, but that, quote, the very first step in truly ending the war is a ceasefire. He said, quote, we expect Russia to confirm a ceasefire, full, lasting, and reliable, starting tomorrow, May 12th, and Ukraine is ready to meet. On Saturday, Zelensky and other EU leaders announced their support for a 30-day ceasefire as a first step.
There is this ceasefire for 30 days proposal that is very clearly now on the table.
It's unconditional ceasefire for 30 days.
Putin, however, suggested that any ceasefire was a matter for negotiations, he said could take place in Istanbul later this week. Putin said Russia had proposed several ceasefires, including a moratorium on striking energy facilities, an Easter truce, and most recently a 72-hour truce during celebrations marking 80 years since Soviet victory in World War II. None of those were agreed between the two sides, and each accused the other of continuing to attack in force during the supposed truce periods.
Welcome back to the program. Now joining us on today's episode is Dr. Ufuk Necat Taşçı. He is an international relations professor at the Çanakkale 18 Mart University. Dr. Ufuk, welcome to the program.
Hello, Mehmet Bey.
Hello, Ufuk. How are you?
Thank you so much. It's such a big pleasure to be with you today.
Good to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Good to have you on the show, Dr. Ufuk. Dr. Ufuk, we were talking about the PKK and how it has dissolved. Mehmet and I, we discussed about the origins of the PKK, what it has done over the last 40 years. And now I want to ask you about Turkey's policy shift. Let's talk about the major shift that's in place right now. Now that the PKK has dissolved, what is the future of Turkish counterterrorism and national security?
I think there has been no shift in Turkish policy in the past few years, but 2016 marks a different point in terms of changing the policy towards handling its own case by itself. So since the coup attempt by Fethullahist terrorist organization in Turkey, Turkey saw something different in terms of its relations with Western countries. So we have been experiencing some serious tensions with our so-called allies since the establishment of NATO. So we had Jupiter missile crisis. And also, we also face some serious sanctions imposed by our own allies. So until 2016, Turkey was, trying its best to relying on its own allies in the region, just like European ones, United States, and others. But no such support came from these countries, and Turkey decided to just take care of these cases alone, and this is how everything started. So previously, ahead of 2016 coup attempt, Turkey also tried to fix its own terror-related issues by using political terms. So Turkey gave a chance to every single group, but it was manipulated by the terror group itself. So since 2016, Turkey has been able to improve its military arsenal, also its capacity in terms of politics, military. So Turkey has started conducting its own operations, and that's why it has been subjected to more sanctions by its Western allies again. But Turkey has never stepped back. By taking these bold steps, Turkey decided to finish terror threat by conducting serious military operations, not only in Turkey, but also in Syria, Iraq, and in many other regions. So since then, Turkey had in the past few years, there have been no terrorist attacks on Turkey by PKK terror group. So it is thanks to Turkey's own individual efforts against terrorism. So the last year, I think in the past 6 months, Turkey again started mentioning giving a chance to diplomacy and negotiations. That's not because of Turkey's weakness, but Turkey wanted to show the world that even though it has defeated the terrorist organization, it still wants Kurds and other parts of people from all walks of life, so all the subjects of Turkish society, to see that Turkey is not interested in waging war, but it is only focused on an effort to fight against terrorism. So I think Turkey also achieved building up a rhetoric, not in Turkey, but in the region. So it has paved the way for Turkey to take some bold steps in Syria, in Lebanon. Now Turkey is shaping different alliances with its neighboring countries, and everybody sees that even though Turkey defeated PKK terror group, it gave another chance for democratization of its country. So there will be some legal steps which might be taken by Turkey in terms of having a long-lasting peace in the country. But I think it will not be limited to Turkey, and it will also be something really comprehensive, which covers the regions like Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, because we know there's a project called development between Turkey, Iraq, United Arab Emirates, and other regional countries. And by placing this route directly at the heart of this terror corridor means that Turkey is not only interested in finishing terror, but building up some stronger ties in the region to not let others, Western powers, some imperialists, to get involved in any future crisis. So I think Turkey is just trying to build up a common fate sense, and it's achieving so far.
Dr. Mehmet, from terrorism to diplomacy, I want to ask you about the meeting that is set to take place on Thursday in Istanbul between Türkiye, Ukraine, and Russia. Now, it's not confirmed who is going to attend from both sides, but we're expecting something to happen, and the day has been decided. It's this Thursday. Putin has said that he might arrive. Even Trump has said that he could take part in these discussions. But if these discussions do take place in Istanbul, Mehmet, do you believe that we can find a credible solution to a ceasefire, or do you think it's still too early?
Well, I mean, that is something that really time will show. But I think the fact that even Putin himself said, I'm unconditionally, I'm willing to meet without conditions. It is a sign that all sides are trying to come to an exit strategy. They're all seeking and searching for this exit strategy that, for this war that everyone has been tired of, I think. But on a broader and on a macro level, I think this move from Putin is related to this NATO leaders meeting in June. Marco Rubio and the foreign ministers will meet in Antalya very soon, and the actual leaders summit will take place in Hague. But what will be the main topic of this meeting will be how the NATO will re-strategize itself for the Ukraine war. Putin made this move ahead of the meeting, and I think this was a very strategic move from Putin's side. He wants to say that, look, I am trying to come to a conclusion to this war, or we need to have an exit to this war. But at the same time, I think if he doesn't come to Istanbul, or if he doesn't, if this meeting is not realized, it will put a lot of pressure on him internationally as well, because all sides are ready and willing to come to that meeting. They're putting a big importance on this. And they have chosen Istanbul and Türkiye as a place because Türkiye and Mr. Erdogan's policy with regards to Ukraine war has been a very balanced one. Although Türkiye does not accept the invasion, although Türkiye has supported Ukraine through different means, it still kept its relations with Russia, and it didn't follow suit when it comes to sanctions against Moscow. So Türkiye has been conducting this diplomacy between the two sides from time to time. Even the grain deal was achieved through that. There were prisoners exchange and etc. But as a trustworthy partner or an actor in this conflict, they have chosen to meet in Istanbul. I mean, Putin's proposal was that. Zelensky is saying, I'm willing to come. I will be there waiting for Putin. So there will be a lot of pressure on Putin because after this proposal, after this move that he made ahead of the NATO leaders summit, we will see if it will turn into some concrete and tangible steps. But nevertheless, even if no clear conclusions come out of this, if they meet, that is still a big step, I think.
Dr. Rafik, I want to come back to you. Zelensky has said that even before talks begin, a ceasefire needs to be in place. And then Russia says that we're not going to, give up on the territory that we have captured. So how can these differences be eliminated between both sides?
If it's not interrupted by Western countries, particularly the European ones, who previously, turned the table off when Turkey was about to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. It was Boris Johnson who, sabotaged everything, and we know it very well. So, and during that time, Russia was also ready to compromise, and they agreed on too many terms. But as I told you, it was sabotaged by directly the United Kingdom and the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So now, if they don't, damage the process, if they don't get involved in free negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, Turkey can manage it again. But if Ukraine loses any kind of territory, it's not because of Ukraine, Turkey, Russia, or United States, but it will be because of United Kingdom and European partners. And as far as we know, Zelensky, even though he wants to rely on its European partners, it's not going to be an easy tool, easy way to handle this crisis, because he knows the capacity of his European allies. So on the other hand, he needs to fix this problem through satisfying both Russia and United States, which seems much more easier than the European initiative. So Turkey might play that role because it has really good relations with both United States and Russia. So can you imagine what would happen if Turkey had never got closer with Russia in the past few years. And Turkey, what would happen if Turkey chose to side against Russia along with its Western partners? So this is a lecture from history, I think, and Turkey just, applies the true kind of mediation, balancing between Russia and Ukraine. But today, I would think the circumstances are really different from 3 years ago. Now we see a different Europe. We see another version of United States policy. So Turkey, it's not going to be an easy case to be handled by Turkey. But Turkey is experienced enough in finding solutions. And Russia very well knows that Turkey is not recognizing its illegal occupation of Crimea since 2014. But in the past 12 years, Turkey has achieved managing its relations, even though it opposes a Russian invasion of Crimea. So I think Putin and Trump, they both want to rely on Turkey. But first, we need to see the results of the first round of talks, and then we can see, we can comment about further developments when it comes to this war. But I am hopeful because Turkey's, CV is really good when it comes to solving and mediating between the two countries. So if Zelensky is not manipulated by any European countries, and if they don't, intend to sabotage the peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, Turkey might find a common solution for this.
Dr. Faknejat Tashi, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. See you.
Dr. Mehmet Çelik, thank you for being on the program as well. That's all for today on Turkey's Diplomacy. Join us again tomorrow for more in-depth analysis of the issues that shape our world.